Hello, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Workflows and Espressos. I am your host, Meaghan Myers, and I hope you all are having a lovely Tuesday so far, or, whatever day you're listening to this. I hope it's Tuesday morning right when it comes out, but we will settle for just listening at all. Okay, let's get into it. I know you guys are really interested, but I'm still in New York. I'm still in New York. I have been here now for 4 weeks, I think. I had to leave for 2. I went to Burma Foundations and I left from New York, went to Savannah, came back. And then I went to Destin for Favor and their like Panhandle Forum. And then I came back a couple days later and that was awesome because I got to see my family. But I am leaving New York in just a couple of days, either tomorrow or the next day, which is, well, as I'm recording this, which is crazy. Clark left this morning and we are heading back to Jackson for the summer. So if you don't know, my husband, Clark, he is a chef and owns his own catering company. So summer is extremely busy for him. So he's going to be working constantly this summer. I am going to also be working and preparing to have a baby, which is crazy. So we are due in the very early fall. So actually, I had an announcement that is bittersweet, but exciting. Exciting for me, bittersweet for you. Workflows and Espressos is going to take a pause while I'm on maternity leave, which will be as soon as I have my baby. Hopefully he comes when we think he's going to come, but we're not sure throughout the end of the year. And we'll be back in January of 2026. So we still have all summer together, but it is wild starting to plan for maternity leave and what that means for the podcast and what that means for work. And I don't know, it's crazy. We're getting closer and closer and closer. We are past the halfway mark by a couple of weeks and things are starting to feel real. I bought a lot of baby clothes in New York City that now I have to get back to Jackson. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it all fits in my bag. So that's what's going on with me and my life. I am going to be at Executive Summit in just a couple of weeks, which I am very, very, very excited about. 1, because it's in Miami at the Ritz, obviously. 2, because I get to see all my friends. And 3, because I'll be there with In-Haven in no particular order, but I am very excited. And I've got to find time to lay by the pool. Okay, so today is the perfect episode for anyone who is starting to think about the second half of their year and doing some planning. I know that we're heading into summer, which is a busy season for so many of you listeners. But even as you kind of start to think through goals for the remainder of the year, which is insane that we are almost halfway through the year, I think this is a great episode. Everything you need to know about strategy, which is a little intimidating. I don't know if I'm going to tell you everything you need to know, but I will tell you my thoughts on strategy when it has worked for me, a couple of examples and some tips for how to get buy-in if you are the leader that is providing a new strategy to your team, or if you're a team member that's noticed a problem and is proposing a new strategy to your leader. So let's get into it. Okay, so before I decided on all of the content for this episode, I wanted to understand if strategy was the right word. And so I looked up the definition of strategy with my handy dandy. I don't know if you guys have been seeing the funny videos on Instagram of it's like me and ChatGPT, not me, but it's like joking about ChatGPT and like, is this invisible person that is like your friend throughout the day? And that is how I feel about ChatGPT. I have the app and I like talk to ChatGPT like it's my friend. So anyways, I linked up with her this morning and she's a girl for me. I don't know if she's a boy for you or if she doesn't have a gender. I call her Chatty, my friends and I do. But one of my good friends also is ChatGPT is a boy for her and she calls him Chad. But what I love about ChatGPT is it is anything that you want it to be. That's what's so amazing about it. So I linked up with ChatGPT this morning and she said, that strategy is an overall plan of action designed to achieve a specific goal or set of goals, often involving long-term objectives and resource allocation. So it's a little stiff of a definition for me, but a quote that I love about strategy in general is that it's just decision making with intention. And that feels like a bit of an easier, less rigid, stiff definition for strategy. So as it relates to our business in the vacation rental industry, that could look like entering into a new market or overhauling your fee structure or completely building out an owner acquisition funnel. And these strategies they start with a why, which is the foundation of your strategy. And this is kind of getting into what I think is the recipe for building a great strategy. It always starts with a why. And I remember hearing this like years and years and years ago, that one of the questions that you should always ask yourself prior to doing anything with your business is, what is the problem that I'm solving for, or what's the goal that I am chasing? And I think it's such a great way to kind of set your intention from the very beginning. So to me, the foundation for a good strategy is grounded in this like need for change. Either, hey, there is a goal that we have to go out and get that we haven't been, or maybe you haven't been hitting this goal. Maybe you haven't had this goal in the past, right? But there is clearly like something that you are chasing. Or it is, hey, we have had this problem. It has been a problem. Our team has told us it's a problem, or I am a member of the team and I have told the CEO that it's a problem. So we need to solve for this problem. And I think there's a couple of questions that you need to ask yourself before you go into like strategy building mode. What I love about strategy building mode is it kind of takes you out of the day-to-day, which is so easy in our business to get sucked into. We're so inundated all the time on the supplier side with prospects and with demo calls and with closing deals and all the things that are required, and going to shows and planning for future shows, right? Where on the operator side, you are talking to owners, you're talking to guests, you're dealing with your team, you're putting out fires all the time, right? Like we're just so in it all the time that I love that building a strategy allows you to kind of take a step back. It's honestly my favorite part of starting a new job, because you see things with fresh eyes, and that's the same to me as like building a strategy, right? Is trying to view things through this like fresh lens, fresh eyes. So a couple of questions to ask yourself before you go down this path. Like if you are taking time out of your day to day for a little bit to build out a strategy, let's make sure that it's worth it. So you need to be able to answer like, why are we doing this now? Like what has come up that this is something that needs to be done now? And if you can't answer that, maybe it's not the right time. And then again, what's the problem that we're solving for, or what is the goal that we're chasing? And these are just kind of your simple baseline, and you don't need to have long, complicated answers for them, but you do need to have a very clear answer. And who will this impact? So, hey, if we're going to go out and overhaul our entire fee structure, who's going to be impacted by this? Our guests, number one, our team who's going to implement these new fees. How much time is this going to take is another question that I recommend asking yourself. And I think this just kind of goes back to this idea that don't ever build a plan just because you think that you should. So once you've answered these questions and you're feeling good, it's time to start building out the framework of your strategy. And you could read 100 different business books and they're going to give you 100 different ideas. And to me, the framework is honestly like however you choose to build it and what works for you. And if you are a person that doesn't need some type of matrix or decision-making analysis and you just need a whiteboard with your team, like I think that's fantastic. One thing that I love is the SWOT analysis. And gosh, I started doing these, I don't know, maybe like 7 years ago, a while ago. And I'm sure there are a million other cool new ways to build strategies or like decision-making matrices. But I just love a good old-fashioned SWOT analysis. So if you're not familiar with SWOT, it is SWOT. And it stands for strengths. So what is working right now? What are your strengths? Weaknesses, what's broken? Opportunities, what's coming up next for you? And threats, so what's at risk? So a really great example of using this SWOT analysis right now in Haven, so the company has grown so rapidly over the course of the last couple of years. And with any startup, you begin the company and you have all of your set plans. Hey, we're going to have this person doing sales and I'm going to do X and this person's going to do Y. And then you start to grow really rapidly. And now it's a couple of years later and we're building out the team and we've just switched over to a new CRM and things are really, really, really busy on the sales side. And so we're starting to revamp our sales strategy. So I'll use this SWOT analysis for our sales strategy. So strengths, like what is working right now? We have an incredible team. Like our team can connect with people across the entire industry. We have a wealth of experience and more than anything, like I think we're just really good at talking to people. And I think that that is one of our strengths. What is broken is we have grown really fast as a company. And I think we've needed some infrastructure that could come with building out a really solid plan in our CRM or a solid funnel system throughout our CRM for leads to go through to where we can ensure that nothing's slipping through the cracks. Opportunities, like I think opportunities are endless for us in the industry. There are always new markets that we're going into and companies that we're targeting and talking to at any given time. And then threats, I think for us is, hey, if we don't get this framework built, then maybe 2 years from now, a year from now, 6 months from now, we could be in trouble where things are slipping through the cracks because we don't have the appropriate framework set up in our software. So it's just an easy way for us to kind of break down. We understand that this is a need. We can feel it. There is like friction day to day. And as we're looking forward, it is certainly one of our goals for the future. So stepping back, performing a SWOT analysis allows us to understand like, okay, here's what are the broken pieces of this and what is going to happen if we don't fix it. And if we do fix it, we can go after these opportunities in a much cleaner, easier way and have more success at those opportunities. So it really just, it kind of lays everything out and ties it up in a clean little bow for you. And so from here, what I think is really, really important when building a strategy is it's really easy to build out goals like grow our prospect list or close 100 deals. Right? But what that doesn't do is break it into actionable steps. So with every single goal, I want to see actionable steps and how we are going to measure that success. So if your goal is that you want to grow bookings by 50%, steps might be like, okay, I'm going to put more money into Google advertising. I'm going to start outbound calling. So I'm going to build an outbound call list and have the sales team start working on this. I'm going to start tracking not only bookings by day, but the average revenue of each booking. And these actionable steps allow you to start reporting on your progress, which I think is really incredibly important just for tracking your overall success strategy. And where I think things fall off, and I'm sure everyone listening can agree with this, is you have a strategy meeting at work. You come out feeling alive, reinvigorated, excited, and then you never talk about it again. And that is so common because, again, we get locked into our day-to-day and it can kind of take the wind out of your sails, right? Where you feel like you're being heard or you feel like the whole team is rallying around each other. We're finally going to solve for this problem or we're going to go after this goal that we've been talking about for a really long time. And then it just kind of falls flat. And so I think this is the part where you have to have the most intention, right? Like strategy meetings, like that's the fun part. And setting your goals, like that is the fun part. Tracking them is the not so fun part. And the part that requires everybody to hold each other accountable. And so I think immediately setting weekly or bi-weekly or monthly check-ins, depending on like what cadence works for you and your team, ensuring that it is not every 6 months or every quarter or every year, I think is really important. And then sticking to those meetings. We know that it gets like those are the meetings that become the easiest to cancel, which can be frustrating to everybody involved, right? Or even going to the meetings can seem frustrating, but I can assure you that if you stick to these meeting cadences, like you will achieve these goals, and your timeline might change a little bit depending on what's going on with your business, or you might discover something new, or you might decide to pivot a little bit, but ensure that you are checking in more often than not. And then listen, we're going to talk about this in a little bit. And I know I'm a broken record, but I love pivoting. I love talking about pivoting. I think what makes a great leader is being able to admit when you are wrong, or that a strategy isn't working, or listening to your team when they tell you that something isn't working. And so being willing to admit when it's time to take a step back and change plans or change course, I think is incredibly important. And then for a team, I think that it is incredibly important to be able to go to your leader and say, hey, I think we need to pivot, and here's why. And this kind of leads me into just like the people of like what makes a strategy. So getting buy-in on a strategy when you're in charge is not that hard. I think if your team trusts you, it's significantly easier, and you build trust by having a transparent and a collaborative culture. So if you are a leader that has made a decision, and I think it's totally fine to make a decision as a leader without needing an entire committee to make this decision with you. Like, you are the boss, you can lead your ship into a certain direction. What I think is really important is that you need to tell your team how you're going to accomplish this decision and why you have made the decision that you have. So in order to have this like positive collaborative culture, your team wants to be a part of the building process and not just told what to do. And I think that's where a lot of leaders can go wrong, is kind of sitting the team down and saying, hey, this is what I've decided to do, and here's how we're going to do it. And the team is like, okay, well then like, what's our purpose here? We're just executing. And that can feel super, super frustrating. And so using your team, who, newsflash, typically knows more about the day-to-day than you do, allows them to feel like part. Even if they didn't make the decision, they at least feel like part of it, right? And I talk about this all the time on episodes, but providing context for why you've picked the direction that you have, I think is incredibly important. So if you have decided that you are going to start a new department in the company, going to your team, your leadership team, or the team that this is impacting, really just who's being impacted by this decision, and going to them and saying, hey, I've decided that I'm going to start this new department, and here's why. I have received complaints over the last 6 months that we needed more help. The existing department is too overloaded and needs a supplemental department to help them achieve their goals. I've decided, whatever that context is, right? Just provide it to your team. And I think it really helps people understand why a decision has been made, especially when they're the ones who have to go and then explain it to their teams. And as a manager myself, I know I've been really frustrated when I've kind of been giving marching orders and then sent to tell my team why we've made a certain decision, and I wasn't even a part of the decision that was made. And not only did I feel like a lot of my autonomy was stripped, I also felt frustrated that I had to go and deliver the news when I wasn't at all part of the decision making, or I didn't really even understand why that we had made the decision that we did. So to get buy-in, I think it's easier than you think, right? Provide context, utilize your team on how you're going to accomplish goals, sit in a room together and say, hey, I've made this decision. Here's why I've made this decision. Let's figure out how this is going to work. And also, if you say this in a room and your entire team is like, hey, this is a horrible idea, I think it's worth hearing them out. And sometimes the team is afraid and needs you to just say like, hey, I understand. No worries. If it doesn't work out, we'll go and change it. Alternatively, they might have a point. And so I think just kind of understanding your team is really important. And this goes to the other side of if you are a team member that needs to get buy-in when you aren't in charge, here's a really good example of this. So when I was at 360 Bloom, I co-managed a team with someone who's a great friend of mine now. But at the time, we kind of had this frustrating relationship because we shared resources. So I managed the reservations team and she managed the guest services team. And during specific times of year, the staff would switch from reservations to guest services because during the summer, we really needed help in guest services. And during the winter, during booking season, we really needed more help in reservations. And so we were always fighting over people, right? Hey, I need an extra person. Or she would say, no, I need that extra person. And we would go to our CEO and say, hey, this is super frustrating. We're abandoning calls left and right. I'm not hitting my booking goals and it's because I don't have enough people. Or she would go and say, hey, our resolution time on guest services issues is really long because I don't have enough people to answer the phones or to answer emails. And the CEO would always say hey, do not come into my office unless you have an Excel spreadsheet and a plan in place. It is very difficult for me to help you make a decision when you come into the office and you're just telling me I need more help. I need more people, right? Without any data to back it up. And this was such an important lesson for both of us. Trisha, if you're listening, I love you. Where we went back to we shared an office. We went back to our office and we built out a spreadsheet together of call volume by month on each side, on the reservation side, on the guest services side, and at what point abandonment rates. So if somebody was calling us and waited too long, that they would hang up and they would abandon the call, when abandonment rates would skyrocket. And we were able to understand okay, once we get to 5 people on, but we have over 500 calls or whatever it may be, we start abandoning calls. And we could see in the data when we needed to have that additional person on our team. And we went back to the CEO with this spreadsheet and we kind of took emotion out of it and took this panicked, hey, we need help. And instead showed her the data. Hey, here's what the data is saying. Here's when we start to underperform as a team, when we don't have the right amount of resources. And it allowed us to appropriately allocate resources from one team to the other. And it was such, I don't know, I look back at this all the time because it was this first pivotal moment in my career where I realized that it doesn't matter how loud you're yelling. No one is going to listen to you unless you, number one, speak in facts and in data. And 2, whenever you go to your boss who's busy, who's inundated with problems all day long, they care less about your problem and more about your proposed solution. And this is something that I realized as then I became a manager, or I was a manager at this time, but I started managing larger teams and teams of leaders who were managing their own teams. And I realized, and now will tell my team hey, you are always welcome to come to me with a problem or an issue, but every single time you do, I want to ensure that you have a proposed solution. Even if we don't go with the solution that you have, I want to know that you put thought into trying to solve this problem and you're not just showing up in my office with an issue. And this is how strategies can be made when you are a team member trying to get buy-in from your leader on a problem that you see every single day. Bring the data, speak in facts, and bring a proposed solution. Okay, back to pivoting. I love it. So we'll call this section course correcting. How do you know when something isn't working, right? You have put this strategy in place, you've gotten buy-in from your team, or you've gotten buy-in from the CEO or the founder or whoever, and now you're having regular check-ins. So to me, I think there's 2 answers. Number 1, the data is going to tell you because you've put measurable KPIs in place, or your team is going to tell you. And their team is probably going to tell you first, right? You will notice because you will have a line outside your door and people saying, hey, we're doing this and it's absolutely not working. And I think that's what's the beauty of Strategy is once you put something into place and you're able to measure it with data and also kind of the heartbeat of your team, you typically know one way or the other whether it's working or whether it's not working. And I think what makes teams great is that they don't abandon their strategy, but instead they evolve it, right? Whereas abandoning your strategy might look like completely throwing it out the window and not revisiting it. And I think that's kind of the bad part of abandoning, or the bad side of abandoning. But I also think there's a good abandoning, which could mean totally changing direction because your original plan wasn't working out because it was based on assumptions that are no longer holding anymore and are no longer the truth, and something has drastically changed in your business. And so I think the goal is to just adapt without completely derailing. So always keeping your why front and center. And we define that first and foremost. So if your why is at the very center of your strategy, you can revisit it regularly and ensure that you are adapting appropriately, but not completely derailing because you've got your why in front of you. And then communicating your pivots early, right? Like silence, I think, creates doubt in a team. And I usually say like silence creates speculation. And when you're not providing context or you're not communicating pivots or decisions appropriately, your team is speculating anyway, right? They're not all at their desks every day, just not thinking of it, right? Like they're starting to create a story in their own mind. And so speaking up and being clear and transparent with your team early and often is important to kind of prevent those doubts and speculation. And then keeping the team part of this like loop of iteration as it continues throughout your like strategic timeline, right? So, hey, here's what we thought. Here's what we've learned since then. And then here's what we're going to be adjusting. And now I'm done talking about pivoting. I know I did a lot. Apologies. So if you're exhausted, if you're like, hey, it's a Tuesday morning, I haven't had time to listen to you ramble for 30 minutes. Here's what you need to know. Okay. Number one, find your why. Ask yourself, why are we doing this now? What's the problem we're solving or the goal that we're chasing, and who's going to be impacted by this? Number two, SWOT analysis or something. All right. If it's not a SWOT, it's a piece of paper or whatever your decision-making metrics is, but get your team together, get in a room and build a strategy. Number three, get buy-in. Number four, know when to pivot. Number five, don't ever abandon ship completely. And finally, on to the next strategy. Okay, that was so fun. I can't wait to hear what strategies you are implementing in the second half of the year. And I hope that you all have an amazing week. I am so excited for next week's episode. I know that you are going to absolutely love it. And I'll see you soon. Bye.